Hello, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Sat Sri Akal. This is Farheen Khan and you're watching the AZEEZA show. Today our topic is forced marriages. The last few topics that we've discussed various types of violence, whether it be sexual or domestic, and how to access service. One of the things that we have spoken about a little bit, but not really, has been women's actual lived experiences and what that actually looks like. So today I'm really happy to have our guest speaker with us, Samra Zafar, a dear friend. Thank you so much for being here, Samra.
Absolutely, can't say no to you.
That's so sweet. So Samra, I wanted to just jump right into it. So we have, we've been talking in the last couple of shows about what is domestic violence, what's sexual violence. We talked about some facts, some figures, the prevalence of it in Canada and around the world. A little bit about the impact it's had on women's lives, and to some extent what kind of services they can access. But honestly, I think we're at a point now where we really want to hear the lived experiences of women like yourself who've been so resilient and courageous. So can you maybe start with just telling us, what does forced marriage actually mean?
So forced marriage, and people have different connotations and versions of the interpretation of it, but essentially it's really about taking away the power of choice from somebody. Mostly women, but men are forced into marriage as well. But it's primarily women who are not given that choice. And that does not necessarily mean that somebody is putting a gun to your head and telling you that's what you have to do. But that choice and agency stripped away due to the cultural pressures, the importance of protecting the family honor, or just being told that if you say no or go against what you're being told, then you're going to be ostracized or marginalized, and instilling that fear of isolation, instilling the fear of rejection in somebody, in a girl, in a woman, that she eventually loses the power to be able to say no to something that she doesn't necessarily want to do, in this case marriage, and that constitutes force. So in any case when that power of choice is taken away, when deciding who your future partner is going to be, that's a forced marriage.
Okay, yeah. And you've, and I know I've met you a number of years ago, and we've kept in touch over time through some really interesting experiences. I know that one of the things that we've all been watching, especially over the last year, has been your own story, and the way that has really touched the lives of so many people. So can you tell us what was your experience like?
Yeah, so I grew up in a Pakistani family. I was I'm originally from Pakistan. I grew up in Abu Dhabi, the eldest of 4 girls, and in many ways a very outspoken teenager who was always pushing the envelope and challenging the stereotypes. I wanted to go to Harvard and Stanford and become a scholar and have an amazing career, while most of the girls around me were talking about marriage and what color bangles they're going to wear, and how many people and how many flowers they're going to be at their wedding. So I was always a little bit of a misfit in that sense. And when I was 16 years old, I was told that I'm going to get married to a man in 3 months, who's 11 years older and who lives in a faraway country called Canada. And like I said, forced marriage doesn't mean that a gun is being put to your head. It was, it wasn't like I was beaten up and told to do this. But when I wanted to say no, when I protested, I was told that I was being ungrateful by going against the will of God, but that I was being, this was a gift to me, and I was so lucky that I've been bestowed with such an accomplishment. I'm the first among all my cousins and my friends to be getting married, and if I say no, that I was somehow going to be termed as ungrateful or abnormal. So the pressures around me were so strong that I just lost that power to be able to say, no, this is not what I want, even though inside I was terrified and petrified about what my future is going to look like. Will I be able to go to school? Will I be able to have a life? Will I be able to go for my dreams? I didn't know answers to any of those questions, and but I didn't have the voice to be able to ask those questions or to say, no, this is not what I want. So in many ways, yes, it was a forced marriage.
Okay. And then when you came here, what was your experience like? What actually happened?
So when I did come here, I became a mother right away. It took about a year and a half or so for the paperwork to go through. So I was 18 when I became pregnant, and then gave birth to my daughter. And I was told that I couldn't go to school because I was someone's wife, and I was someone's mother, and I was a daughter-in-law. So I had to stay home and protect the family honor. I was told that going to school would be a waste of time. In fact, I should consider myself lucky that I got to the real purpose of being a woman sooner rather than later, and didn't have to go through all that education crap. And over the years, I just completely lost my voice, my identity, my soul, when I was humiliated and insulted, for not bringing enough dowry, or not having, or not being a good enough wife, or not serving him and his family well enough. When I was humiliated and called bad words, I was told that I deserved it. And when you hear that on a daily basis, you start believing it. You start thinking that I am the most worthless person in this world who's not worthy of love or respect or belonging. And I started to believe that about myself. I felt like I'm ugly, I'm the scum stuck at the bottom of someone's shoe, I don't deserve to be respected or loved. And so when over the years, when the first bruises appeared on my body, when the abuse turned physical, I had completely lost my voice to stand up for myself. I had lost my courage. I had been isolated for so many years that I didn't even have any way of knowing better. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any people that I knew on my own. I didn't have any family in Canada. So I tolerated it, and I thought maybe I deserved this too. I was told that good women are the ones who stay quiet for the sake of the family and to keep the family intact. So I wanted to be a good woman, and I tried many, many years to try and fix myself. Maybe if I do this or do that, or don't talk too much, don't have opinions, don't have so many thoughts and ideas, or maybe if I just woke up earlier or kept the baby quieter at night, whatnot, like any kind of thing that I could think about that could somehow fix and diminish the level of humiliation and abuse that I was suffering. And I didn't even know what to call it then.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of women don't have the words even, right? Or even recognize that they're actually going through it. And that's one of the things that we, talked about in one of the earlier episodes was like, women often will say, okay, if I had put more salt in the food, maybe he wouldn't have beaten me, or if I had cleaned the floor better, it would be better, right? Or we
because it's somehow always her fault.
It's always her fault, exactly. And then there's just no real way to and the sad part is that we don't realize is that it's not about what you're doing that's wrong. Yeah. It's just that constant want to have that power over.
Exactly. It's all about power and control, because ultimately, like when that person feels the need to exert that control because they want to feel powerful, and it's their own insecurities that they want to overcome by controlling and exerting force on another person, they will find anything to justify it.
Exactly.
If it's not the salt in the food, it would be the shirt that they suddenly want to wear tomorrow morning and it's not washed, or it would be the baby whose bedtime is just maybe she's awake like half an hour past her bedtime. Like it could be anything. It could be this cup. Why is it here? Why aren't you eating with me, and why aren't you eating enough, or why are you eating too little? Like it really could be anything. It's not about what you do. It's the responsibility and the blame and the shame lies with the abuser, because they will find any excuse to justify it.
No, that's really Yeah, I'm really sorry that you had to go through that. I'm really sorry that there's so many women that are dealing with it, you know, and that often we don't even realize that we're going through these things.
Exactly, and that's the reason why I started talking about it, because I knew that my story is not just mine, it's the story of millions of people, especially women and girls around the world, who continue to suffer in silence because they feel they have no power or no choices, and they're afraid, and they feel that they're alone. And I felt that for a very long time, and it was only after 10 years of marriage and 2 kids, and after like a decade of abuses, when I fought and went to university. That was the one thing that I was not willing to give up on, was my right to an education. And it was only then that I learned that what was happening to me was abuse. And it was not okay, and it was not my fault, and I did deserve better. And at that time, you know, it still took me another few years to just gather enough courage and knowledge and power to be able to leave. The final factor, I think, was just my daughters, and realizing that there's a cyclical, a generational cycle to abuse, and I didn't want my daughters to grow up thinking that that was okay, and for them to experience it eventually as well. So, you know, it left, and there was obviously a lot of support and a lot of friendships and a lot of champions and mentors that I got from the university. But on the other hand, there was also a lot of cultural backlash, which was quite crippling, and it's just representative of a lot of messages I receive from women all over the world due to my speaking work, who are saying similar things to me, like, what will people say? My family will abandon me. My culture will look at me weird. I will never find support. There will be a big question mark on my character as a divorced woman. And I felt that firsthand here in Canada. And I know what that's like. I've grown a thick skin to it, but there's a lot of women who are not able to. Even I wasn't able to just a few years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it keeps people trapped in those situations for a very long time, and sometimes forever.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for your courage, and you know, I really want to talk about in the next segment, you know, what your accomplishments have been, how you were able to get out of that, and what you've been able to achieve. So we'll take a quick break, and then we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, welcome back. We're watching the AZEEZA show. Today our topic is forced marriage, and with us is our guest Samra Zafar. And so we were talking before the break about what some of the challenges were, you know, what it was like for you to actually, you know, go through that experience of 10 years of marriage and 2 children, and realizing, you know, after going back into, you know, the sort of education system and the university, and realizing that that's sort of where you came to realize that what you were actually experiencing was in fact abuse. So tell us now, like, what happened from that point once you knew that you wanted to get out, and where did you go from there?
Well, it wasn't easy. There were many days when I felt like giving up. There were many times when I thought I just couldn't do it. It's too difficult. Especially the amount of cultural backlash I faced was crippling.
Like what?
Things like, you know, aunties calling me and saying, "Oh, we've heard that you were sleeping around and you ran away with somebody. Is that true?" Men thinking that I'm somehow fair game now because I'm damaged goods, and you know, putting some unwanted sexual advances towards me, or being called a shameless woman because I chose to walk out, a homewrecker because I broke my family, a bad mother who's leading her daughters on a path to hell. You know, good women are the ones who stay quiet, and there must have been something wrong with her that you know, her marriage fell apart, because it's ultimately the woman's job to keep it intact. And it hasn't stopped. I still face it. The only thing that's changed is my own attitude towards it. Whereas like 4 years ago, I would have been crying and lamenting over it, and I know you've seen me cry on a number of occasions during our friendship because of things like that. But now I think I've just grown a thick skin, and I know that, you know, those attitudes are representative of those people and their views instead of who I am, and it's really all about how I see myself. But that's been a process, right? Because when I was in university and I was facing all of that, but on the other hand, I just learned over time to sort of separate myself and put myself into school. And I just threw myself into my academics and focused on my courses and working multiple jobs on campus to make ends meet and raising my daughters. And I was living on campus, which made it easier. And eventually, like, it paid off, and I graduated with 17 awards and scholarships. I was the top student at the University of Toronto. And that's when I realized that I really wanted to do something about it. And I was like, so everything that I've been told for so many years, that I can't make it on my own and I won't survive and I'm gonna be, just on the streets forever or whatnot, was all just a bunch of lies. And it was all a control mechanism to keep me trapped and not have me develop my voice. So I decided to go public with my story at that time, and because I knew that there were so many other women out there that are still trapped in those situations, and maybe I can provide them with a little bit of hope. And it's been wonderful. It's been 5 years now that I've been doing the advocacy work, and I'm starting a not-for-profit, and I'm doing a lot of traveling now and doing a lot of speaking work internationally as well. I now serve as a governor for the University of Toronto, and writing a book. But it's really about giving voices to people who feel that their voices have been snatched away, and hopefully empowering them and shining a little bit of light into their darkness. And this work rocks my world, and I would love for there to be a world when it's no longer needed.
Exactly.
That's the ultimate goal. But until then, it's something that I've made my life mission, really.
And how do you keep yourself motivated, and how do you stay inspired to continue?
You know what? It's the messages that I receive from people that keep me going, because I have received over the last 5 years hundreds of thousands of messages from people all over the world who congratulate me, who thank me for breaking the silence. Women writing to me that I was going through this too, and reading about you gave me the courage to leave. There are women who send me their transcripts from university telling me about how they got 90% on one course, or how they send me their resumes, like, do you think this looks great, I'm applying for this job. Updating me on their progress, and just even sometimes just wanting to talk. And I'm happy to engage in a little bit of conversation. There was a woman from India who wrote to me a few days ago, and she's in her 50s, and she walked out of an abusive marriage because she's been following some of the work I'm doing in my articles and videos, and she's like, thank you for showing that abuse is not okay, and thank you for showing that we need to do something to challenge this notion that whatever a man does, it's his right. And there have been a lot of learnings for me in that process as well, because I started off believing that maybe this is unique to my culture, but I've learned over the years that abuse is universal. It happens everywhere. I mean, the messages I receive are from each and every country across the world, whether it's Malaysia or Philippines or Latin America or UK or Australia, and a lot of these women and even men who reach out to me have very similar stories, and there's a level of shame and stigma associated with leaving and speaking up. Just those insights, those patterns, and those people, that's what keeps me going. And my biggest achievement, I think, to date has been a man who wrote to me from Pakistan last year after reading an article that I wrote for the Toronto Life magazine. And he said, I have a 17-year-old daughter who's supposed to get married next month, and I've decided to cancel her wedding and send her to university after reading your story.
Wow.
So that was life coming full circle, and I think I cried for 2 hours after reading that. And honestly, when things like that are what keep me going, and it's like soul fuel. That's what I call it.
Exactly. No, that's incredible.
Yeah, because if I can take my experiences and take them and turn them into something positive to make a difference and impact people positively, and that, and touch lives, that's the legacy I want to leave behind.
And what kind of advice would you give to anybody who's watching, any woman, any young woman, anybody who wants to pursue their dreams? What would you say to them?
I think what I would say is that listen to that little voice in your head. There will be tons of people around you who will say that don't do this, you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, you will never succeed, you will not make it. Especially if you're trapped in an abusive situation, you will be told that it's always somehow your fault, because that's a way of control. But then there will be this little voice in your head which will tell you that maybe I do deserve better, maybe this is not okay, maybe I am not that bad. And listen to that voice, because you will find people who will resonate with that voice. You will find people who will support you. Leaving is hard. It's like jumping off of a cliff without a parachute. It's like walking in a dark tunnel, not knowing which direction you're going in and hoping to God that you'll find some light at the end of it. But if you just keep going and you don't give up, you will fall. It's not going to be easy, but you get back up and you keep going one more step, one more day. Success is inevitable. And it doesn't have to look like my success or anyone else's success. It's what you define as success. Your honor is what you define as your honor. It's the way you see yourself. It's not the way others see you. People call me, I've heard people call me damaged goods and all kinds of things. I don't see myself as damaged. People used to call my daughters and I as a broken family. I think we've never felt more complete and happy than we do now, and I have the best relationship with them. But it's really, like, nothing around me has changed, but what has changed is how I view myself and how I view my life. And you will get to that stage, because we all of us have the strength and power in us to create the life that we want and deserve. We all, it's inside us, that power. It's not around us. It's not going to come from outside. It's going to come from within us. And once we realize that, and we use it, and we listen to it, and we listen to our heart, and we use our brain to get to where we want to go, there's no stopping us. I think we are a force to be reckoned with, and it's really a matter of taking that power back and creating the life you want for yourself and carving a path for you and your family.
Thank you so much, Samara. This has been really, really just incredible is the word that comes to mind right now. I'm so glad that we had a chance to meet you, to hear from you, to hear your story. You know, the resilience, the courage that you've shown is just so remarkable and incredible.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This is great.
No, thanks so much.
And so, if anyone wants to keep in touch, I'm absolutely happy. And if you get any messages, please do share them with me.
Absolutely, we will for sure. So thank you so much to the viewers and our supporters for watching today. You've heard this really incredible story of this incredible woman, and I think if we can learn anything from today, it's just that, you know, we all have the potential to succeed no matter what our hardships are, and we just got to look inside ourselves to find that. So please send us your messages, tell us how you felt about the show, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.